to craft recommendations, it was very clear that if you're going to handle that problem, you have to handle it in another way.
You have to find a different route.
You have to find a different route because whatever recommendation you come with is one that the people you have met is not going to accept.
We have Paul Mwangi in the studio. Paul Mwangi is one of the joint secretaries of the BBI task force. He's here to shed some light on how they worked as a task force, how they came up with the report, and of course we'll be asking about some areas of the report that need some conversation. This is a situation room. Let's allow him to have a sip of water, and then we come back and continue the conversation. It's 17 minutes past 8 o'clock.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
18 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Thank you very much for joining us. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have CT Mugan, Jerry Thorne, Nduoko. My name is Eric Latif, and we have Paul Mwangi, the joint secretary with the BBI task force. Of course, Paul, you were telling us how you went around the country and collecting views, and Jerry had asked you, were people actually giving you problems, or are they also giving you solutions, what they thought would be a solution? And you're saying, yes, people are coming up with what they thought would be a solution to many of these issues that you are raising.
Yes, and sometimes you also have to listen. People don't know that they're giving you solutions. But just listening to the directions in which their thoughts are going, then you are able to tell in which direction you're going to have to follow as you sit down to craft a solution.
So among the issues that you've, of course, come up with is, let's look at the governance, the hot one in the House. Before your report came out, there was all these speculation that you were going to come and propose a full parliamentary system of government, where we have, the chief executive of the country actually coming from parliament, and this is the prime minister, maybe for having two deputies, having two deputy presidents. We also saw Attori trying to steer the conversation back to that yesterday. Then we see you giving us a presidential system where the president is the head of state and government, and then we have half of the cabinet coming from parliament and a prime minister coming from parliament.
First,
which Kenyans told you this?
First, the one consistent thing that Kenyans have said every time they have been involved in the process is that they want to elect their president on universal suffrage. And that has never changed. So every structure of government that you try to propose must deal with that fact. But now the question is, how do you, even if you wanted to bring a very strong parliamentary system, how deal with the fact that you're going to have a presidential election in which somebody is going to be voted in on very stringent conditions by the voter on universal suffrage? Now, how could you take that person and then come and make him ceremonial? It's not possible.
Can't.
So if you're going to have a very, very powerful parliamentary system, then you're going to have to weaken and lessen the presidency.
The president's powers, right.
And possibly then you need a president who is not elected directly by the people. And we are also talking about this president who is the symbol of national unity, again, symbol of national unity because he's being voted on direct. So it is not, it became, the need for this is not about power. It's not about who is holding the power. It's about how everybody is participating in government. So currently we have a president who comes in, he is the head of state, head of government, but he runs everything. So he sits with the cabinet, makes decisions as to how what is going to be done, and then still after that has to go and start implementing himself. He has to still call in the ministers and how far is this road. So we thought that part of the participating in government is letting somebody else run around doing the implementation. So the way we have structured it is that the president and the cabinet will sit down and make the policy decisions and make the decisions about what is going to happen. They are going to pass those decisions then to the prime minister. The prime minister sits with the PSs through his permanent secretary who coordinate them, and they start the actual process of implementation. So if a decision has been made to build a road, we question the president about why we are not having a road. But he will say, okay, fine, we pass that road. Then we'll go to the prime minister and say, did you get a decision from the cabinet that you need to do this? Yes. How far are you with that?
So the prime minister sits in the cabinet, but the prime minister is basically in charge of the civil service.
The implementation.
The implementation.
Does this not run the risk of the role that the separation of powers plays in checks and balances? Because what in essence you're doing is merging the executive and the legislature, if you're having, and then you still have the presidential system. So you don't have that check in a parliamentary system of vote of no confidence, which is what would be the mitigating factor for having removed the separation of powers as the checks and balances.
No, we do have the vote of no confidence. So if you are
for the president.
No, the president is
for the prime minister, but the powers that the president has are still quite strong. See, with the vote of no confidence for the prime minister, it's because the prime minister has quite a lot of powers. The president is usually ceremonial in a parliamentary system. Yeah. Now here, the president is not ceremonial.
He's not ceremonial.
But you've removed the checks and balances that the separation of powers that would ordinarily the separation of powers would provide.
No, we have not, because we've maintained the impeachment at the Senate. And the president
impeachment of the president. Okay.
The president can be impeached at the Senate.
Okay, but still there is a compromise on the checks and balances when you merge the executive and the legislature. You don't feel that?
Our thought was that having a classical Western model democracy and trying to impose it on that without thinking how it can operate within our setup won't work. Currently, people were complaining that the government, since we came up with technocrats for government, the government has become arrogant. Because
they don't feel the people.
Right.
They don't feel
That's
the people.
reality.
They don't answerable directly to the people.
Yes, and even today we see Senate and National Assembly complaining. They are summoning people who are not coming. But if you are in that house, if there is a question time, in which the prime minister has to answer, if there is provision for having ministerial statements, there's no question of you writing letters to cabinet secretaries asking them to come and you grill them. You have a question, you simply write a ministerial statement, a question, which he must answer next week. And he has no choice.
This system that you speak of, is it uniquely Kenyan? Or is it something that we've cobbled from? Let me explain the background of why I'm asking this. Because having read it, what seems to me is that you've looked at what works in other places and you've determined this mix would best suit our purposes.
Actually, it is the system we ran before the Constitution for close to 50 years.
Yes.
And looking back at the system we brought in and the system that was there, it's very clear we were much better.
So we've gone back to having ministers coming from Parliament, just that we did not have a prime minister until the
only that. Although we did have prime minister once
at the very beginning. Right?
So would it be that situation now? What we had post 2007?
It would be the same situation we had prior to the Constitution 2010.
Right.
And that the government had better grounding. People understood government better. Cabinet ministers who are politicians know how to deal with people, how to explain things to people. Now, government can be doing a lot.
But we don't know.
Nobody will ever know.
And is this the answer to your assertion that we need to bake a bigger national cake? Because you say that in your report, we need to bake a bigger cake.
It's a conversation we never have. Wealth creation is a conversation Kenya never has. So we talk about how we are going to collect more taxes. We don't talk about how we are going to be a rich country. What are we going to do? What is this we are going to do? Are we going to promote our agriculture? Are we going to
innovation?
Yes. What is this one product that we want to do? Are we going to start producing a car? We said no. We are going to industrialize. Industrialize doing what? We really must zero into those things that we think we can do that can create wealth.
Right.
And that is a conversation we must continue to have. The biggest conversation in Kenya is how we are going to share. And the worst political fights in Kenya are about sharing.
About resources.
It's
about sharing the very meager resources. Not thinking about how, we need to say this money is not enough.
Let's increase the money.
Let's increase the money. The reason we are fighting is that this money is too little.
Or rather, in this case, increase the sources of this money, or create sources that now we can have more from which to share from.
Yes.
Isn't that now where the conversation should be around? And then who gets involved in the conversation? I mean, from what you've talked about, the people, those in government, those who are now mitigating for policy, who then makes that decision? Who fuels that conversation for that to happen?
A lot of direction when it comes to wealth creation, of course, comes initially from government, because you have to set the atmosphere, you have to set the infrastructure for that to happen. But even within Kenya itself, I think that's something we need to start challenging each other on a question of.
Because I don't think we're even struggling with it, because I don't.
We are
think
not even struggling.
We're not
with
even
the
struggling. We've
level.
not dealt with it yet.
So, but these are challenges we need to make of each other. And we don't demonize. There are points at which we demonize wealth, and people who are running after wealth look as if they're some evil guys who are just trying to take advantage of society. I think we need to promote that.
So it seems to me, with the political system that you've proposed, there wouldn't be any need for a referendum.
That would be a legal question. It's up in the air.
As a lawyer,
I wouldn't want to comment on it, but
it seems it can go through without a referendum.
many things will be able, but whether it's a must for the others, that debate is out there.
Because
I
this
would not want to
ordinarily would
contribute.
have fallen under a referendum question, when you change structures in government. But the way you've proposed it, it seems like you've managed to circumvent
I think we
the
need
need for a referendum.
to listen to more legal views as to whether the changes proposed can fall within the description.
From what about your view as a legal practitioner?
We said we were not going to go into that discussion, so that if we didn't want our decisions to be based on whether
on a referendum
or no referendum, we just say, is this a good idea?
Right.
And we put it out there. Let other people decide how.
I want to go back to that
do this.
question on that system of government and what you have proposed as having a prime minister coming from the party with the majority in parliament, who's then going to be appointed by the president, of course, going to be approved by parliament. What if the party with the majority does not come from the same party as the president? What happens in that case? What do you see playing out?
They must learn to work together. First to say we've been there before. We had for 5 years a president who was PNU, and we had a prime minister who was ODM.
Yep.
And so long as everybody is being a leader for Kenya, it doesn't. There was nothing to collide about, because they should be able to agree on how to take the country forward. But if you're a president and you've gone to campaign and you have been denied a majority in the House, I think people have made a statement to you and about your party. And they say, we don't like your party, and we would not want your party to be the one running government. If they wanted, they would give you that majority.
What if
if you get the majority and you're denied the presidency, then they're also saying, we think maybe your presidential candidate is divisive. You got good ideas, you got good policies, but I think your president is too divisive.
Your candidate is not it.
Your candidate is not it. So it's kind of, they're saying, I think this is the person who should keep the country together, who should lead the country, and I think these are the ideas.
But then also
that he should pursue.
You may have the same person who's actually the presidential candidate being the leader, who then joins parliament. So people rejected you as a CT Muga as a presidential candidate, but because you are the leader of this coalition, then you also join parliament and you become prime minister.
We have said the person who becomes the prime minister then will come from the majority.
Yes.
But one of the proposals we had said is that if you're the runner-up and you lost the election, you must go and become the leader of the opposition. Because the opposition is a role.
Absolutely.
And
democracy,
yes, and somebody must play that role, and must be a credible person. And we can't go looking for an opposition leader from someone people have never.
And here's the conundrum. So the person who actually lost the election as a president has a majority in parliament.
His party.
Yes. Has a majority in parliament.
So his party will produce a prime minister.
His party will produce a prime minister, but the person now becomes the leader of
he goes and becomes the leader of the opposition.
And the opposition is not his party.
The opposition,
let's look at 2008, right? So Raila Odinga had a majority in parliament.
Yes.
But he had not won the election. So he goes into parliament. His party is the majority. He should produce the prime minister, but he cannot be the prime minister. He'll be the leader of the of the opposition.
We had a situation in that scenario where the parliamentarian